With Eddie Brock separated from the Venom symbiote, the Life Foundation symbiotes Scream, Riot, Agony, Phage, and Lasher return in Venom's Separation Anxiety. What's up guys, Roman from R&S Entertainment here, and welcome to another episode of Comic History, the weekly video series where I explain, retell, and give context to the iconic storylines, origins, and events in the world of comics. In this episode, we're going to be going over Venom's Separation Anxiety, the seminal 1994-95 Venom miniseries directly following Venom being defeated by Ben Reilly in his first fight as the Scarlet Spider, and picking up on the Life Foundation symbiote plot threads from Venom's very first solo comic series, Venom Lethal Protector. I've covered both of those arcs in previous episodes of Comic History, with the Venom Scarlet Spider fight happening in my Origin of Scarlet Spider and Fall of Venom episodes, and the entire Venom Lethal Protector miniseries covered in my special oversized 90th episode of Comic History. So if you want to catch up on the story so far, make sure to check those videos out as well. Our story begins with Eddie Brock, who had been captured and separated from the Venom symbiote following Fall of Venom, being transported to Colorado's supervillain prison The Vault, accompanied by a ridiculous armada of security forces, including a fleet of flying warships, armed security turrets, and about 100 men armed with jetpacks and sonic rifles. Eddie walks past them, musing to himself about how even without his symbiote, they're afraid of him, but also thinking about his crimes. As Venom, Eddie had participated in the killing of countless people, whether it was to escape, to survive, or just for the joy of it. His last thought before entering the vault is of his other, the Venom symbiote, and wondering where they had taken it. We then see that the symbiote had been taken to a secret facility in New York, where a team of scientists were experimenting on it, dousing it in flames to test its pain tolerance and marveling at its shape-shifting abilities. The symbiote thinks in short bursts, its thoughts consisting of Eddie, pain, escape, Eddie, as it reforms itself into Eddie Brock's likeness in an attempt to communicate to the humans outside its tank that it needed to be rejoined with its host. Alone with his thoughts and his guilt, along with being heavily sedated, Eddie strains against his robotic restraints until he breaks through the machinery, enraged and ashamed at how many people he had killed while bonded with the symbiote. Outside, the guards are approached by a skimpily clad Donna Diego, one of the security enforcers hired by the Life Foundation to become a host for Venom's symbiote spawn in Venom Lethal Protector. She grins as the distracted guards are quickly taken out by the other Life Foundation symbiotes, with her dress dripping down her thigh as she becomes Scream. With Eddie having almost smashed his way out of his reinforced glass cell, and reporter Ken Ellis having snuck his way into the facility to attempt to get an interview with Brock for the Bugle, the facility begins to fall into panic as Eddie prepares to force them to kill him as penance for his crimes. Eddie notices 5 new guards enter the room, but then sees that their Vault uniforms are melting around them. The Life Foundation symbiotes spring from their disguises, using their experience and knowledge of sonic weaponry from the Foundation to quickly dispatch the guards, relishing in their victory until Riot and Agony both begin to lose control of their symbiotes and their urges to kill. Scream, who has seemingly been in control this entire time, punches Agony and tells her to regain control of herself. I do want to take this moment to point out something that will continue to happen through the story and may confuse you if you're watching the video. You may notice that in this panel, it looks like Riot is telling Scream to regain control, with her saying why. But then in the very next panel, we can see that it was clearly supposed to be Agony Riot was talking to. This is where, if you're paying attention, you'll realize that because of how indistinct and generic most of the Life Foundation symbiotes were designed, the colorist actually makes multiple mistakes throughout the book by coloring the symbiotes incorrectly, which when you read the dialogue can be obviously the wrong character. And this happens to the point that sometimes the Foundation symbiotes will refer to themselves by the wrong name. I'm not going to point it out each time it happens, but if you see some weirdness going on there, just be aware. This was in 1994 at the beginning of the Clone Saga, and Marvel Comics were getting increasingly haphazard and slapped together. Howard Mackie was writing Venom books, and Spider-Man was about to be buried in clones. It was a mess. So, at this point, Eddie breaks completely out of his tank, and although Riot tells him they're here to help him, he punches his symbiote Spawn in the face and knocks him to the ground, which Scream says he shouldn't be strong enough to do without a symbiote. The Foundation symbiotes group up to capture Eddie, who screams that he wants them all dead. The symbiotes take Eddie prisoner and begin to leave, and Ken Ellis runs out claiming to be Eddie's doctor and saying that he could help them figure out how he had retained some of the symbiote's strength. Scream immediately recognizes Ken from the Scarlet Spider origin story and takes him prisoner as well in case they need a hostage. Later, Eddie wakes up in a warehouse in the silence of not being connected with the symbiote, and forced to literally confront his sins, he lashes out at Scream, saying that all of them needed to die before they started killing people. Donna lets the Scream symbiote recede from her face, begging Eddie to hear them out, that they're decent people and just want his help controlling the dark urges of their symbiotes. Donna tells him that the only reason they had attacked him in Lethal Protector was that they were convinced that the Life Foundation was doing good, and that Venom was the enemy. After their symbiotes had been almost completely destroyed in Lethal Protector, the Life Foundation had used their technology to reconstitute them. Having found out that the Foundation had less than charitable goals in mind for them and their symbiotes, they had abandoned their posts and tried to find Venom to ask for help in learning to communicate with and control their symbiotic others. Phage grabs Eddie and threatens to impale him, establishing himself as the one in the group who from this point on will adamantly want to kill Brock. The other symbiotes restrain Phage until he's able to fight through the symbiote's impulses and regain control. And when Eddie continues to egg them on, Scream gets frustrated with him and has him thrown into the warehouse with Ken Ellis. The Life Foundation symbiotes begin to despair, not knowing how to force Eddie Brock to cooperate with them, and knowing that along with the ever-present threat of being consumed entirely by their symbiotes, the Life Foundation would be attempting to recapture them as well. In the warehouse, Ellis bounces question after question about the symbiote and his connection to it off of Eddie, who remains sitting silent until he suddenly leaps up, grabbing Ellis and smiling crazily, saying that he can feel that his other is on the way. Meanwhile, and throughout the background of the rest of the story, we see the Venom symbiote escape the lab by hiding itself on the body of the lead scientist, butchering the entire room of people and commandeering a ship to cross the country and rejoin with its host. Agony looks at herself in the mirror, asking how she got here and what she let herself get turned into, and an unseen person approaches behind her with a knife and plunges it into her back. While this is happening, Eddie and Ellis have managed to escape the warehouse, running into some gang members outside that Eddie uses his still massive strength to take down, thinking to himself that maybe even without the symbiote he could redeem himself and be a hero. Not used to not having the Venom symbiote to block bullets, Eddie is shot in the arm and almost killed, but is saved by Ken Ellis, who smashes a trash can into the gang member's head. The remaining Life Foundation symbiotes find Agony's human host dead in the warehouse, with Phage snarling and saying that Brock is a psychopath and had to die. They run outside and follow the trail of beaten gang members toward their target, but Scream grabs Phage by the arm and says that he was losing control, and that they still needed Brock, and could be better than him if they could learn to communicate with their others. The symbiotes track Brock down to a dark abandoned warehouse, and Phage rips through crates, screaming that Brock is making him angry. Phage whirls around just in time to see a knife rip through his symbiote. After screaming in pain, Phage stumbles out of the darkness and falls toward Eddie, dying in his arms, believing like Agony had right before she died that Eddie had been the one to kill him. Brock, knowing that no regular knife could pierce a symbiote, goes to inspect it further but is confronted by Scream and her two remaining siblings. Scream fights Eddie, who armed with the sonic knife is able to hold his own for a short time, saying that though he would have loved to have had the chance, he had nothing to do with killing the other symbiotes. And when Scream begins to get the upper hand, Lasher stops her from killing him, reminding her that she was losing control and saying that they couldn't sink to his level. They tie Eddie up and Lasher makes one last plea to him to help them, that all they wanted was to learn to communicate with and understand their others and be able to use them to do good in the world. As Eddie begins to listen to him, Scream eyes the sonic dagger on the ground, extending her symbiote towards it. When Brock actually agrees to help them, Scream leaps for the dagger and says that Eddie is evil and had to die. Riot tells her to get control of her symbiote, and she says that she has always been in control, and that her symbiote had been speaking to her from the beginning. She plunges the sonic knife into Riot's chest, killing him and lurching towards Lasher and Eddie, saying that she had always been able to hear the symbiote's voice in her head, even before she was joined to it, and that the voices had told her that she and all of the others were evil and had to die. Lasher, who Scream refers to incorrectly as Carl, who we saw get killed earlier, realizes that Donna wasn't hearing the voice of a symbiote, but was a paranoid schizophrenic who heard voices in her head already. Scream murders Lasher as well, turning on Brock just as the Venom symbiote arrives, being pursued by Vault guards who had followed it across the country. Sensing that Eddie is in danger, the symbiote immediately leaps onto him to once again become Venom, who proceeds to make short work of Scream. The guards catch up to their fight, and knowing that he couldn't allow the symbiote to be recaptured, Venom goes into camouflage mode and escapes, leaving Scream and the other Life Foundation symbiotes, whose human hosts had all died, to be captured by the government. Once they escape, Eddie tells the symbiote to get off of him, and that though they were back together again, he needed time to sort through how many of their actions as Venom were driven by the symbiote, and how many were his own choices. And that wraps up Venom's Separation Anxiety, a classic 4-issue Venom miniseries during the age of 4-issue Venom miniseries. There were a ton, released essentially back-to-back in the 90s. Venom would next appear to have a one-on-one match with Carnage in the Venom Carnage Unleashed miniseries, which parodied the existence of the Maximum Carnage video game in the Marvel Universe, and is a topic for another video. Though there are clear issues with the errors and laziness in Separation Anxiety regarding the Life Foundation symbiotes, and Howard Mackey's writing on Spider-Man and Venom is not good in general, the overall idea of telling a story with Eddie separated from the symbiote is something that hadn't really been done before. And it does finally follow up on the 5 Life Foundation symbiotes from Venom Lethal Protector, who, though unbelievably generic and rarely used, I always enjoy seeing in symbiote stories. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to RNS Entertainment for weekly content, leave me a comment below, and follow all of my social media via the links in the description. If you want to see more great stories like this, check out my Spider-Man Symbiotes History playlist and Comic History playlist on my channel. And if you want to help support RNS and keep me making videos, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/RNS Entertainment. That's it for today's video, guys, and I will see you all next time.